Okay. 10 minutes. Okay, 10 minutes. I'll try to wrap up, try to put it in perspective with leading a question while I'll invite some questions from the floor. I'd like to ask this question I asked, as Minister was asking me earlier, the format of the event. I've tried to standardize it, more or less, but there is a local element and a standard element. One standard question is there everywhere, from me every time, and I'm going to ask that question. We heard a lot, the issue is, of course, if I understand as a media and a publisher, which we are struggling to do always, is to contain the flood of information out there. So nobody can complain that they don't have enough information. The problem is how to distill it into simple steps that people can grasp, which can motivate them towards action. So the question is, I'm coming to, can you, all of you, tell me one single biggest obstacle that you can shoot at, or you can ask everybody to shoot at, which collectively bring down or take us a few steps or major steps forward? We know all the co-op and, a lot of ideas. We try to put those 10 simple steps, for example. But in your view as a government, right, what are the biggest challenge you face as a government to move to the next level? Or ASEAN, or the EU, or the private sector? So may I begin with you?
Thank you. Yeah, I think this is a very pertinent question. Basically, if you were to talk about climate change, Rafida put it very aptly, in the sense that people's stomachs must come first. They must be happy as a people of a country. He has to be fed. He has to have his daily basics. And once that is done, the issue of talking to them about climate change is vastly, a matter of just pointing out what are the things, your 10 points, for example, in your booklet. They will understand, they will be able to follow. But if they are still, in the poverty, below the poverty line, so to speak, it is difficult. We have got to recognize this. Therefore, our plans must be, the communication plans must be different for those guys who are educated and those guys who are less educated. So this is the challenge. To me, the communication part is the biggest challenge. How to convince our people. I mentioned just now in my speech about nuclear, for example, nuclear energy. Now, even nuclear energy, there is this pros and this is the cons. So to convince them to say that, look, this is the clean energy, but then they will ask you, what about the waste and so on? What are you going to do about that? Yeah. So it is a very debating point with regards to how to convince people. So communication, back to what I've said, communications, how to bring the message across. No matter how good your plans may be, if you can't bring that message across, it's useless. So I feel that in Malaysia, this is where I'm facing the issue of communicating, getting the masses to come together with me and do the right thing.
Thank you. Excellency.
Well, as I've said, discussing climate change at a very high level, it's a preoccupation of those who have the time and the energy and, of course, the resources to do it. But awareness of what's happening and the need for them to participate, to respond to those issues, can begin at all levels. Now, I was talking about the guy who may not want to talk about carbon footprint because he hasn't got shoes. Now, let's look at the agricultural sector. People are aware, and they don't know why, but they know that rivers are drying. Fish populations are depleting, whether it's in the river or in the sea. And many other changes have come about that result in their not being able to continue with their types of agricultural occupation for generations that they have undertaken. So they only understand this, what's happening. This is the time, therefore, to strike, meaning get them on board to say this is a result of global warming. What is global warming? Blah, 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 blah. And you can help
Connect the dots.
Yes, to then, at your level, to help this. And again, for us, your simple tips, really relevant for those who have cars, who have electricity and so on. So you make us aware, then we'll participate. So children, you begin with the children. Sometimes we forget this is the future of this planet. If the young kids continue not to bother...
You're going to save the planet for the kids.
Huh?
You're going to save the planet for them.
No, they should participate to save the planet
For
themselves.
themselves.
We'll be dead and gone by then. They should understand now that they must have a planet worth living in, for the future. Saving the planet for them, I think, is too much. They should do it themselves. 20%, 30% is their responsibility. If they keep polluting their own home areas, it contributes to some part of environmental degradation. So I agree, the awareness, and perhaps this is not Peter's ministry per se, but it is collective effort. And talking about what Vincent, digress a bit. Vincent talked about having a action plan for Malaysia for global warming and so on. Actually, Malaysia had for many years various programs and action plans and regulatory measures that actually contribute to responsible care of the environment, except that we haven't collated these bits and pieces to make it a national energy on whatever you want to call it, reduction of carboning, whatever. The rivers, we are been aware. I know for years we've been talking about it. But now maybe I agree that it's time to put this together and tell the world, hey, on reforestation is nothing new. We've been doing it. As you know, we are participants of ITO. We subscribe to all the ITO requirements and such. So for us, get it together. And then we go on to ASEAN, for example, because these things cannot be done by Malaysia alone. We also invest in neighboring countries. So awareness, and perhaps we then take all these pieces together and become a coherent collective effort.
Thank you. Ambassador?
Thank you. First of all, I would agree with the Minister and with what Tan Sri has said, won't repeat it. The additional comment I would make is that in terms, if you talk about communication, where could one also put the focus is communication towards industry. And now, many companies in Malaysia, both domestic and foreign-owned, are convinced of investing in green technologies, in energy efficiency and so on. But the large majority, I think, still needs to be convinced of the fact that investing in climate-related matters is not just a cost, but it's also a potential revenue later on, whether it's for your domestic sales or for your foreign sales. And for Europe, that's already very, very much the case. It's a fact that the European consumers do pay a premium for green products in a number of sectors. That's a fact. So, in other words, Malaysian firms in those sectors stand to gain if they to gain access to that market if they do invest in green products. So if you ask for a specific focus, I would definitely go there and try to get all the companies, not just the big ones, but particularly the small and medium-sized enterprises, get them on board.
Thank you, Ambassador. I'd like a question from the audience now. The topic was government has changed agents and uphill task. So since time is limited, I would like a question on this topic. How many of you agree or disagree on this statement, that governments have to do and we have to follow, that we cannot do anything? Because I heard these statements from very smart CEOs in Malaysia 2 weeks ago. Roy, we cannot do anything, the government have to do. They tried to convince me I'm wrong. And they bought me lunch.
Did you say they were smart?
No, I was thinking they were smart. So, and they bought me lunch. So, how many people agree that it is, I'm talking of Malaysia now, okay? That in Malaysia it is the government's responsibility and we will follow. And how many disagree? So agree if you can do by a show of hands, please. We have the ministers here. How many people think that it is all the government's responsibility only? Okay, and how many think that we can do something ourselves? There you go. I would take that as a majority. I would like to invite one question. The minister has to leave, but one question. Who wants to go first?
To ask him so that he can...
Okay, I will have two, if you don't mind. One from a gentleman, one from a student, one from a lady. You choose. You have 3. Make it quick. We'll start with the student first.
Yeah.